Hey, look everyone, Alice is back. How you doing, Alice? You've joined us at a festive time. You see, it is Yuletide here in Wonderland, and at the Mad Tea Party we're celebrating. I have green and red, which are the celebrative Yuletide colors. Hey, and it's David. David has heard about the Yuletide celebration and joined us as well.
Welcome in, Brother David.
All right, maybe he can help us find Alice because we're going to see how deep this rabbit hole goes.
Merry Yuletide, David.
Mary Yule.
How's Yuletide in Canada, Peter?
Yeah, it's great. It snowed here for all the materialistic hypocrites. So everybody wants a white Christmas on Christmas. Then they all want it to melt, a day or two later, so they don't have to shovel it. So yeah, it's all right. It's all right. I never got into Christmas, like even as a kid.
I wasn't raised with it, so the first time I celebrated Christmas was a year or two ago. Yeah.
I mean, everybody knows it's BS, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I've never seen a birthday cake ever. Okay, so whose birthday you celebrating here, really?
Right.
Forget the religious connotations and the pagan connotations and all that kind of stuff. I remember I'm a son of immigrants, right? They came to Canada, and my mom and her family lost everything in a devastating earthquake. She had to quit med school, come to Canada, start fresh. And my dad escaped the same country, from a mandatory draft and socialism. Basically, he wanted to come to America. That's what it's, I guess technically it is America, North America, to live a Hollywood life, right? Drive Cadillacs and bang Doris Day and whatever the starlets of the day happen to be, right? So they met here, and we lived in an apartment in those first few years, right? And I remember going to school and people telling me about Santa Claus the first time, how he comes down the chimney and all that stuff. Well, like here I am 4 years old, and I'm like, but dude, we live in an apartment. There's no chimneys. Like this whole story is BS. It makes absolutely no sense, right? Because my parents hadn't indoctrinated me into these festivities because they were busy at work trying to make a living in a new country and stuff like that, right? And so my grandmother raised me, so I didn't really know my parents were my parents. I'd see them on weekends, but until I was like 5 or 6 years old, right? So it was interesting to realize recently that I've always been doing the math on BS. Like I've always wanted to know the truth about stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Let's crack into that a little more. I watched your interview when you did on Game Changer, and
oh yeah, with Sandra, she's great.
yeah,
Yeah,
it was an excellent interview. And so you had said something about halfway, 3/4 into it about you gave an anecdote about a friend of yours who had said to you, even if the Bible isn't true, it's still true. And you said years later that resonated with you once you understood what it meant. And I that's what I'd like to.
Well,
I don't want to misquote you. Yeah.
I'll tell you, it wasn't
why
a
don't you
friend.
unpack that? Why don't we go from there?
It was Alan Watts. It was watching a little 10-minute Alan Watts video.
Yeah.
So when I first heard that, like I thought he had spun a bearing, right? Like I'm like, that's the stupidest shit I ever fucking heard, right? But whatever. Then about 2 years ago, I met somebody on holidays that just flipped my entire world upside down, right? Like I had to examine everything from ground zero, right? Because I couldn't understand what had happened meeting this woman on holiday, right? So I'll say that, I'll preface it, is you can ask me anything, I'm not selling anything, right? Like I don't have an image to live up to, like, so you're not going to offend me.
Right on. That's what we're about. Let's get into it. So
yeah. So
that's our favorite
just
kind of
fucking
tea.
let loose and start blasting. Like start blasting here, man.
So I think that's important, and that statement resonates with me as well. And that's funny that it's Alan Watts, because I really like Alan Watts. I didn't catch that when I was watching. But whether Jesus walked the earth or not is sort of irrelevant to me. It doesn't deteriorate.
Yeah.
It doesn't deteriorate the message at all. And I think people sort of, to me, it almost makes more sense for it not to be, and that makes the message stronger to me, because I think Jesus is an archetype for all of us. We're all sent down here to suffer and to die, and it all has meaning. I think Jesus is an archetype for all men and all women, and for humanity, let's say. And I think that message strikes stronger than a literal. Okay, let me back up a little bit. The Book of Job is one of my. Actually, I'd say that's my favorite book in the Bible. And I used to not like it. I used to really not like it when I was a kid, because I thought, why would Job serve this God that doesn't care about him? Like, he's playing this game with Satan up in heaven, right? And I was missing the point that you're supposed to be looking at it from Job's perspective. He doesn't know that this conversation between God and Satan is taking place.
Yeah.
You, as the person reading it,
one of the sons of God, Satan, one of the sons of God. I don't know if you picked that up in the Book of Job. So all the angels are sons of God, by the way, supernatural beings. They're all men. They don't look like Victoria's Secrets models, but they're good looking enough that the men of Sodom and Gomorrah wanted to bang the crap out of them, right? Like, anyway, sorry to interrupt. So God's a sex book, or not God, the Holy Scriptures is like a sex book, but people miss it all. You know what I mean? They try and sanitize it, but it's almost like a porno when you really get into it. So, which is going to sound blasphemous to the religious crowd. Well,
I really think that Kubrick kind of pointed that out in Clockwork Orange when Alex, the hero of the story, is in prison, in treatment, and he starts to read the Bible, and he's so fascinated by it for the wrong reasons, and they're convinced that he's actually into it because he's into it, but he's not into it because it's making him a better person. Well, he's talking about all the violence and the sex,
Neif, that reminds me of that saying that no one knows the Bible better than the devil.
Oh yeah, he knows it pretty good, right? Yeah, for sure. I'll tell. And do you know why he knows it better?
Truth.
You got to.
Well, okay. Who is the devil? Who's the devil? You tell me. Because
that's a big question that we could definitely talk about. I think I have probably a different view on Satan and those concepts than most people, but
let it fly. If you're comfortable, let it fly.
Yeah. No, when I think the devil specifically, I think of it in tarot and the arcana. There's the number 13, the major.
I fucking love tarot, man.
Wait, no, 13 is death, so devil's 15. Yeah. So devil represents a very enticing or seductive opportunity or situation. That's what the devil means to me.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, he was the most beautiful angel in heaven.
Okay, yeah. To me, that means
second in command to God.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. He was in charge of the heavenly host, right? The music. It says he had pipes in him. So however he sang, like, it was a lot better than friggin' Lou Rawls and whoever else you want to pick out there, right? So he was in charge of all of this stuff. Now, what was Lucifer, the most beautiful angel, the highest angel, second in command to God? What was his sin in heaven?
Pride, vanity. Arrogant.
Right. More specifically, it says he wanted to be above the Most High. Okay. Like he just wasn't satisfied running in everything for God.
He
you know what I
argued
mean?
with him.
He had to be above him.
Questioned God. He was the one who
Well,
questioned
well, this
God
is the
and
thing.
told him you were
Pride.
wrong. He was the only angel that said, "You're wrong."
Yeah. Okay. So he says that he's wrong. Now, in order to be the supreme being, you cannot be wrong and actually be the supreme being, right? Like it's by default. Like it just doesn't fucking work when you do the math. So, so pride. And out of all the sins, which sin does God hate the most? If you guys know.
It's a sin against the spirit, right? So it's a sin against. Oh yeah, David. That's yeah. I think you're right, David. Apostasy.
What?
Apostasy.
No.
Sin against
pride. God hates pride because all of the other sins emanate from there. Okay. You can't start doing the other sins until you've committed the sin of pride, right? And that's why God hates it the most. Now, when I speak about sin, you can use archery terms, right? Which is to miss the mark, right? Yeah. Or in like artistic terms, right? You got a lot of artists watching your program. You have a blank canvas or a blank sheet of paper. Well, it's only pure and perfect until you get that one little drop of ink somewhere. You know what I'm saying? Which then makes it, it's not without sin anymore. It's sin. It's contaminated, right? So pride is what contaminates all of us.
This is David.
Now,
sorry.
Hey, David, what's going on?
Hey, nice to
I like those curly locks. Yeah, that's cool.
Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry. Go on.
Mm-mm. Feel free, man. And now, why is the devil necessary in the greater scheme of things? Why do you think that is?
That's an excellent question. I think the yin and the yang, right? There has to be balance. You can't understand good without there being an evil.
Yeah. So you need dark in order to display the light, and you need bad in order to know good, and so on and so forth, right? So yeah, definitely it has that yin yang, that positive negative continual fucking what do you call that? Am I allowed to swear on this show? So
I will be so fucking offended if you fucking swear.
No fucking.
Okay. All right. So now, and the religious get really pissed off at the word fuck, right? But here's what they're missing. They believe in a God that created everything, right? So if he created everything, then I'm pretty sure it's not lost on God that the word fuck in the English language is going to be the most versatile word of all. Okay. And they all get bent out of shape. Oh, this guy can't really believe in the Holy Scriptures and God if he's dropping F-bombs all over the place. And I'm like, fuck, man, didn't Jesus Christ expose hypocrites like you? Like, isn't that what the Holy Scriptures is partly about? Is like, so okay. So now you get Adam and Eve. You guys all know that story, right? Now, if you look in terms of Adam and Eve being creatures that God made, right? Like he made Adam out of the dust of the ground, okay? And breathed life into his nostrils. Now, last century, scientists took a cadaver and fucking desiccated it, sucked all the moisture out of it, ground it all up, and chemically analyzed the composition of the human body, right? And what do you think it came out to be in the exact same elements and minerals, proportionally wise, percentage wise?
Carbon?
No, carbon's one of them, man. There's so many of them, right? So
we've got a little bit of almost everything in us.
Yeah. But we have the exact same.
Everything.
Yeah, which is exactly the same as the dust of the earth. Okay, so whether the scriptures are 6,000 years old, 10,000, whatever, or whether they were just faked last week, right? Like the time frame doesn't matter. Like that's pretty friggin' coincidental that basically on the second page of the Holy Scriptures, God breathes life into the dust of the earth, and he made a living soul and called him Adam, which means man, like fucking mankind or whatever, right? Like not necessarily one singular guy, right? But we'll stick with the singular guy story right now.
Okay.
Right? So, and then Eve, how was Eve made? She wasn't made out of the dust of the earth. She was made out of one of Adam's ribs, right? So, in a deep sleep fell upon Adam, and sounds like anesthesia to me, right? And out of Adam's rib down here, which just coincidentally happens to have the most genetic material in the entire body, that if you want to clone another being from, it's all contained there, right? So that's another coincidence, right? So here we have Eve. So the first woman came out of the man, right? But Oprah Winfrey, every afternoon, she's going to tell you that motherhood's like the most important job in the world. And in many respects it is. Oh, she says hardest job. It's the most important, perhaps, but the hardest job. Okay, well, obviously she's never worked in a coal mine.
Hey, but if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
I guess
she's got a pretty good
raising children is a hard job if you have shitty kids.
I'm a stay-at-home dad now, and I mean, hey, it's one of the coolest, easiest jobs I ever had. Yeah.
Hey, do you know?
Yeah, like it's cool. It's a privilege, right?
Yeah. Do you know about the tablet for the Sumerians? Like talking about the Anunnaki?
You know what? I've heard of that, right? The Anunnaki and all kinds of other stuff, and Enki and whatever. Here's the one thing that when I hear stories like this is you could have the most whacked out fucking story imaginable and fucking suggest it to somebody, but because we're so pre-programmed by culture and religion and ultimately the devil, who happens to be the God of this world that blindeth the minds of men, we are so conditioned against anything to do with God that we immediately grasp on to the fucking Anunnaki or whoever the fuck they are, or the Palladians or something in the fucking universe or anything but God, right? It's always anything but God. Right. That's another coincidence, right? That
actually, they do get into God, but the way they depict God and the devil is much different than it would be in the Bible. But the only reason why I bring it up is because it has many similarities with texts that are in the Bible. It talks about the Great Flood, but it's through means, and it talks about how mankind was created, but it said it was a committee of gods, or they were called Anunnaki, which means from heaven to earth came. So you make of that what you want, just aliens or whatever.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? But I haven't delved into it really deeply. Because that's another rabbit hole, man, which you guys love. Like, there's no end to this kind of stuff, right?
Well, what interests me most about it is that it's written actually before anything else that we know about. It's the oldest civilization known. So it's like that was where.
But here's the thing:
Gilgamesh came from, and that like they're still unearthing things in Göbekli Tepe and finding more tablets and things like that.
It's much like the Vedics in Hindu religion and the Christian, the Vedic text. They talk about the deities and all the beings in the sky, and if you really look at it, they talk about how to build ships and how ships are built, and it's broken down in
No, totally. Totally. Well,
but they even say in the Bible there's that stuff too.
Yeah, and that the thing is who's teaching the Bible? And the word Bible's not in the Bible, by the way, right? I just want to get that out in the open, right? Well, getting back to what Dave said. So, about the Anunnaki and however long ago they were, and it possibly predates the Holy Scriptures. I'm not even going to argue about it. You know why? Because we don't even know if George Washington was fucking real.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they just tell you they got a bunch of fucking wooden teeth in the Smithsonian, and you don't know where they got. They could have got those from a pawn shop, for all I fucking know. They got my money for admission. It's all made out of U.S. tax dollars to fucking hide the truth. You think the powers that be want people knowing the fucking truth?
You can fly to Sumeria, though, and you can look at these carvings for yourself.
Yeah. No, I'm telling you, they're there. But the issue is is we have no way of doing it. And I'll tell you an example of how we really don't know what time it is, right? Flavor might not have been that fucking wrong. You know what time it is. You know what time it is. I'm not, I'm not even sure if I have the right song. I don't read a note of music. So, so now, I work in the automotive industry, right? I haven't been for a couple of years, but for years and years I did it. So I would see a steady stream of clients through all walks of life from all parts of the world, right? So one day, and I'm fucking chatty, so I'll ask people, what they do, and then if I have interest in that, I'll press them for information and stuff. So it's really, really fucking cool. I met easily between 50 and closer to 100,000 people, and I'm talking on an average 1 hour conversations with each of them. So some of them more, like all day for fucking weeks at a time, to just 1 hour and never again, right? So, which exposes you to a wealth of knowledge if you're paying attention. So anyway, all that to say this. So this guy comes in, I go, "What do you do?" Right? And he goes, "Oh, I'm a professor at the university down the road, University of Toronto. Probably the most prestigious school in all of Canada, right? So, on the order of a Harvard or a Yale or whatever." So I say, "Yeah, professor of what?" And he's like, "Ancient ceramics," right? So I go, "Oh yeah, well, how old are some of these artifacts that you're dating?" And he says 2 to 3 million years old, right? So now he's thinking I'm just a fucking grease monkey that doesn't know shit from Shinola, right? And I can't blame him for having that preconceived notion, because everybody has preconceived notions. Everybody's running around sizing everybody up on this, slightest, most stupid shit oftentimes. But sometimes they pick up shit and they're right about it, right? So it's anywhere in between both extremes. So what the problem is when you look at the doctrine, I'll call it doctrine, or the indoctrination of educational institutions and scientific publications, they tell you that the earliest appearance of man from the fucking primates is 100,000 years, okay? And then some scientists and supposed scholars and researchers will push that date back to 1 million years. So now, if I give this, PhD doctor, whatever the fuck his name was, at a prestigious university, making $100,000 a year, and everybody's calling him doctor, if I fucking point out to him that the furthest back that the literature of the day dates man's appearance, if he wasn't made out of the dust of the earth, if he actually did come from a monkey, is 1 million years. And this guy's telling me he's finding shit from 2 to 3 million years, right? So I don't bust him on any of this, right? Because I don't want to make him look like a dick, right? So I say, "Well, how do you date these artifacts?" And he says to me, "We carbon date them." So the next thing out of my mouth is, and I'm sitting in greasy coveralls, right, at a desk with an appointment book and whatever. And I say, what's the half-life of carbon? Because if you're going to date them, you got to use half-lives, right? So I said, "What's the half-life of carbon?" He said, "I don't know." I said, "Dude, I think it's 11,400 years, but let me just look it up on the computer to make sure." So sure enough, it's 11,000, whatever, close enough to that. I say, "Let me round this up to 11,500. He said, "Why would you do that?" And I go on a blank page of my appointment book, and I take 11,500 and I divide it by 2, right? So whatever that comes to, 5750. I don't fucking know. Get a calculator, right? So, but I go through it, right? 5750, 2875, 14, blah, 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 all the way until I get to decimal points. I add it up longhand, right? And I come to about 30,000 years, right? So I quickly double check it with the calculator, and unless you check a calculator, you have no way of knowing if it's wrong, and believe me, I found some that would be, one of my fucking bookkeepers for years, I was overpaying taxes. because her calculator was wrong. I had to yell at her, just fucking do it longhand until she realized her calculator was wrong. Anyway, so if you add it up, I don't even get to 250,000 years based on carbon dating. So how the fuck can you tell me anything is as old as it is when the math doesn't fucking bear it out? Right?
I heard that some years ago about carbon dating. People were really questioning carbon dating.
Dude, it's like all of this shit. It's like the PCR test everybody fucking is an expert on now, right? like all of a sudden 2020 is the year everyone became a fucking microbiologist and a virologist and whatever. But good, why weren't we that in the first place? No, but why weren't we all this in the first place? Like, think about the human potential, how remarkable people are, and how much time we spend fucking around with the most stupid fucking shit. No wonder people can't figure out they're getting fucked over and stolen from, and their freedom's taken away, and they're being fucking poisoned and killed. Like, we're just so, I don't even know how to explain it, right? But now the reason I was thinking that is this woman that I met on holidays. I was like, just talking to her in the pool, down in the Dominican, and she's like another language, right? So we're yip yapping away. And, and I stop and I say to her, I go, man, like, it's the 21st century. Like, why isn't it that everybody knows 12 to 15 languages fluently, dude? Right? Like, think about that. How come I don't know music? I don't know a word of music. Now, maybe my brain doesn't operate that way. I've taken a couple knocks in the head, but like we all have.
I get what you're saying.
Say that again?
I definitely get what you're saying. Why isn't our education better? Why aren't we getting taught these things?
Yeah, so all of that stuff, right? Yeah, exactly.
I get on,
and it's a ton of reasons, right?
It's like the kids, the YouTube videos you could be watching complete garbage, or you can watch how to build and repair stuff that you'd have spent thousands going to college for to learn 10 years ago. And then you can order the parts on Amazon anyway. And I'm telling kids today, but it's double-edged. I'm going, well, I can't say if I was your age and I had that I wouldn't be doing the same bullshit y'all are doing instead of learning all this shit y'all could be learning. Just because I'm sitting here going, I want to learn all this shit,
Yeah. And there's not enough time in the day. So now, in antediluvian times, right? So before the flood, which there's archaeological and geologic evidence all over the fucking world, okay? That there was a worldwide flood, right? So, but let me finish with David's thing and the Sumerians and why I use that guy that studies ancient ceramics and doesn't know shit from Shinola. Why this is important. Because unless you know the truth of something, unless you know the genuine article, you can be deceived with the counterfeit. And now who's deceived with someone trying to pass off monopoly money to you in change? Nobody is, because it's so far off from looking like a dollar bill. People just laugh it off, right? But in order to deceive somebody, you have to make the counterfeit as close as possible to the genuine article, right? So that if it's money, you got to make your counterfeit money so good that a cashier that counts, a bank teller that counts cash every day for decades can't feel it or see it. You know what I mean? It's got to be hard for him or her to see, right? Those are the best counterfeits. And this is how the devil lies to us. You got to put shit, like to kill, rats. How smart are rats? They're fucking smart. They don't even eat McDonald's.
Yeah. Amazing.
Rats are smart. They're some of the smartest creatures on earth, right? Them and cephalopods, right? Octopuses, squids, fucking geniuses. And shapeshifters, by the way. But we can discuss that later. So now counterfeit, that's how I get back to Washington. We don't know if that guy existed in 1776, right? Americans don't know there was like 7 presidents before Washington. And I think, almost all of them were black, and everybody's making a big deal out of Obama. that I consider white because his mom's white. So if he's black because his dad's black, then the math works the other way. Obama's white because his mom's white. End of fucking story. I don't care if he's got an afro. Like, this is just pigmentation that's switched on and off by genes. We all contain the same genes. It just depends which are activated, right? So now I could take a picture from a thrift shop that I bought, wherever, and black and white, and show it to you, David, and say, hey, man, this is your great-great-grandpa here, right? You got no fucking idea if it is, and that's just what, 3-4 generations ago? So there's you, your dad, your grand, yeah, up to 4 generations. And if your dad never met your great-grandpa, your whatever. Well, anyway, that's 4 generations, but you get the picture is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So a lot of the stuff you have to test. What do the Holy Scriptures say? Prove all things and hold fast that which is good. So to prove is to test, okay?
Right.
Here in America, you take a race car to the testing grounds. In Britain, they take them to the proving grounds, right? Well, okay, the Holy Scriptures in English were written in Britain. So prove all things, so test all things. All means every fucking thing. Prove all things, hold fast that which is good. So that's not a quick grab like fast, quick. That's like fast, like fastener. Like you're going to take 6-inch friggin' screws and screw pieces of wood together. Like if you're going to try and break that apart, like it's fastened together so tight, you're going to fucking destroy what it is, or epoxied or anything. So prove all things, hold fast that which is good, right? Which is basically put everything to the test. Don't let go of what's true, right? So that's what I try and do in my life. That and try and figure out who's making the money. And as you guys know, money's not even fucking real. The only real money is silver and gold, right? But that's another whole story. So here's why I don't jump at the Sumerian stuff and this and that. So it may or may not be true. It may predate it. There might be this kind of stuff. But then again, maybe the Holy Scriptures are true. Maybe it is written in a code like Jesus Christ said. To them it's this way, but unto you it is given to know this, this, and this, right? So he's telling you it's in code. Well, okay, if you're the only begotten Son of God, you come forth from God, you come from the divine, which means you also are divine, right? Because you're made out of the same composition. Then you're going to know that shit's going to be tampered with, or there's a possibility of it, that the attack is going to be on the truth.
Well,
if you're walking around telling,
you could look at something like the erosion on the Sphinx. The water erosion takes thousands and thousands of years to look like something like that. And that's not really something that you could fake.
Excellent point, right? So you guys know that there's no coincidences, right? Like I'm pretty sure you're clever enough to figure that one out by now. But even if you aren't, I don't think there's coincidences. Like I think everybody's where they need to be.
Engineering practice.
What's that?
I said coincidence goes against engineering and science. And like you're talking about, in the Bible scripture, what they're describing is a scientific method. You test everything. That's why when people say science denier, they really don't know what they're saying, because science is supposed to deny. A scientist is supposed to deny science until it's proven and an engineer applies it. And if he can't apply it, then it doesn't exist.
Right. So you have a hypothesis, right? And then you come up with a methodology, and then you do your testing and your fucking measurements, and then you write up your conclusion. So whatever those 5 steps are, the scientific method. So you guys are down there in Nashville, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm up in Canada. So now you should be able to give me your procedure, right? So let's say your procedure is that H2O in liquid form solidifies, becomes a solid at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, right? For you guys, 0 degrees Celsius for the rest of the world. So we're going to test this, right? So you got to have basically the same kind of sample of water if you want it done properly, to make sure it's not contaminated with elements that'll make it freeze higher or freeze lower. And then you have to have standardized fucking thermometers and blah, blah, blah. But you should be able to send that to me. And without meeting, I should be able to conduct that experiment and write up my own fucking observations and conclusions. That's the rest of it, observations and conclusions. So So, and then we can come to, yeah, fucking water freezes at 32, you know, and that's science, right? And then we send it to a guy in India, and, you know, he gets his thermometer and his freezer and his fucking test tube of water, and we have science. That's science. What science is now is science falsely so called, right? What we see are just commercials nonstop for the guys behind the scenes. Well, my mentor, that neuroscientist that was world famous in the study of paranormal, that worked for the US Navy in the 70s on weather modification, that I found out a couple of years and shortly before his death that he worked for the CIA. Well, he's not going to fucking tell me, an undergraduate that's fucking palling around with them, you know, that he worked for the CIA, right? So this guy, he funded all of his own research so that nobody could influence him. The university administration, any kind of company that wanted the experiment to go his way. So when I'm testing shit, it's like that from him, Dr. Persinger, you know, like, you know, this guy was X-Files before there was X-Files. Now, getting back to the Sphinx and erosion, David, this is what I wanted to say. So now, I'm growing up in Canada, and I started high school at the end of the 70s, I think, you know, and even through elementary school, I had American teachers. Now, why did I have American teachers? Well, they were draft dodgers, dude. They didn't want to fucking die in Vietnam for bullshit. So they came, you know, they fled, whatever, you know, like they would get, so I was educated like at the high school level, sometimes by PhDs, right? And one of the guys, one of my most favorite teachers, Dr. Wolf, Dr. Thomas Wolf, not that guy, Thomas Wolf, but anyway, he was always tripping, right? I think he was dropping acid before class and shit like that, or fucking burning or whatever, right? So he was always happy when my dad would bring him moonshine at the parent-teacher interviews, right? But this guy, one of the things he said in geology class, geology is a science. He said, and I remember this from grade 12, that at current rates of erosion, the highest mountains you see on Earth within 12 to 14 million years will erode down to sea level. And then he went on to say, but because, you know, the volcanoes erupt and constant land masses are being formed, you know, the land continues to grow. So it's going to be a lot longer. Now, two things in that. So the world can't be as old as they tell us because we can measure the rates of erosion. Every single major river that flows into the sea, the Amazon, the Nile, the Mississippi, the Volga, whatever, Yellow River, you name it, right? Whatever that flows. They all flow to sea level, right? Ultimately. When you measure the sediments, the erosion from the land masses into the delta, and I think Mississippi is actually the best one, all around the world in these deltas, the amount of sediment only amounts to 5,000 years. You know, why isn't topsoil on every landmass in the world like hundreds of feet deep, man? Like if you don't cut your grass and rake your leaves and shit, it's going to grow over your patio stones. You can measure that year over year, how much vegetation is now creating topsoil. Well, anywhere you dig in the world, like, I mean, if you get 20 feet deep of topsoil, you know, you open up a garden center, right? Like everything else, like you're hitting clay pretty quick or stone or whatever. So, and then they say, oh, the ice age and that all stripped everything off and all this shit. Well, dude, I don't even know if David's great-great-grandpa was fucking real. How am I going to know, you know, the shit back in the Sumerian days, Moses days and stuff, right? I just have to put it to the test of what I know, right? And to try and do it as objectively as the scientific method actually is, yet in the 21st century is ridiculed because they want to suppress the truth from us. Now, why is the devil important? We get back to the Garden of Eden, right? So people back then, even after the Garden of Eden, the records say they lived 6, 7, 8, 900 years old. Now, everyone that I've ever asked in my life, Do you think if I put you in an environment, right, a sealed off environment that had the purest, cleanest air and the perfect temperature and the purest, cleanest fruit and water and all that shit, and you have to walk everywhere or whatever, do you think you would live longer? Well, everybody fucking says, yeah, of course you'd live longer, man. Like you're in a fucking perfect environment, right? And so now, imagine living hundreds of years. You know, like me and Neif are pissed off because we don't have enough hours in the day to learn the stuff we should have learned back when we were fucking 8 years old. You know what I'm saying? So imagine that. So you could get a PhD in everything if you wanted to, right? Well, what happens after hundreds of years of gathering knowledge? Dude, you go fucking crazy because you try everything. You try everything, right? And what kind of things are absolutely abhorrent to you guys right now that we've heard about in this last year? Like, name me some psychotic fucking shit that you guys have come across. Pick something.
Something abhorrent.
What's that? Say that again.
Yes, I said, did you say something abhorrent?
Yeah, abhorrent.
Abhorrent.
Yeah, abhorrent.
Yeah, like something gross and fucking so
Something
freaked
bad.
out and evil and stupid, right? What's that?
Nothing's really striking.
No, dude, like you got every famous person going banging kids on Epstein's Island. Like that's pretty fucking abhorrent, right? You got people knowing about adrenochrome, which is, you know, you scare a kid to death and you fucking extract this chemical that makes you live longer and look younger and fucking, you know, it's the best drug out there. Apparently it's made from fucking humans, right? Now, these are the same kind of people that were doing this back before the fucking flood. And the same kind, because it says there's no new thing under the sun. You're breaking up a bit. What did you say?
I said, has there been tests on ingesting of adrenochrome, and that also, like the effects that are in that also that's the only place that it comes from is by scaring and then killing a kid.
Well, synthetic adrenochrome isn't as good now, is it? Right? Like synthetic anything is not good because you can never quite get you can't get the chemical chain the same,
oftentimes
right? So
synthetic drugs are equally as potent and molecularly almost exactly the same if you have a good chemist.
Right, but they're not, right? There's always the one or two fucking receptors in the brain that they don't fucking match up perfectly, right? So there's always a flaw, okay?
It's not necessarily a
flaw, but it's not
in the same way, and it's indistinguishable to you.
If you're doing things for a spiritual reason, right? If you're doing things for a spiritual reason, it ain't gonna matter, and whether or not it's the same, it's just not gonna be the same to you. You got to think about the mentality of a person.
No, I'm not talking
to do that. Isn't going to be thinking that it's, oh, well, the synthetic is just as good. They're going to be going, no, this is not the key to life. You know, I mean, that's kind of some, you know, if they found.
No, but it is the key to life. It is the key to life. Because before the fall of man, right? If they stayed in the garden and did what God said, they'd still be alive. Now, you're in a perfect environment with no contaminants. Why wouldn't you be still alive? Right? So the devil now, okay, Adam and Eve, so God makes them.
What I always wondered,
what are they?
On the Garden of Eden topic, real quick, I've always wondered, and one thing, you know, because you can see a lot of you know, realisms in most any scripture of any faith. Where is the common belief that this garden itself existed? Was it a place on the earth? Was it a different plane of existence?
I don't know where other
mothership was. It
I don't know where other
floating around the earth.
I don't know where other Christians put the Garden of Eden, but witnesses put it. It's somewhere like in Iran, I think. Is that right, David? Somewhere.
Right.
Somewhere around.
Except except it says, if you read it, in the garden, like 4 rivers flew out of it, right? The Pison and the whatever. Like, so the rivers were flowing out of it. Now, usually it's the opposite, man. Like rivers are, like they're fucking emptying shit out, right? They're not filling stuff up, right? So all that to say, and Neif said about other planes, and Winnie said about other dimensions and worlds and all this kind of stuff. If there's something, if we live on basically a plane, then yeah, that could exist in another separated place from us. But it also could be in places that they don't really allow us to go and that are blocked out by Google Earth and stuff like that, right? What we commonly refer to as the North Pole. Now, Admiral Byrd, I think the most decorated admiral of all time in the U.S. Navy, he went to the North Pole and he's picking up friggin' fresh vegetation like palm trees and this and that. Okay, maybe it thawed out from the Ice Age. I don't friggin' know. But maybe it was coming from a place that's not so fucking frozen as they tell us now, is it? Now, I went to the Arctic Circle in Scandinavia last year. Dude, that whole fucking land up there has got these big rivers just gushing water day and night all year, right? And I'm thinking, where are they coming from? Like, they don't have enough vegetation north of the Arctic Circle because, trees grow 3 feet high the further north you get. They don't have enough topsoil to hold this amount of fucking water, and they don't have the glaciers that are melting to supply these amount of rivers up here, okay? So the topsoil is negligible. It's frozen like 1 yard down, like the tundra or whatever, if it even gets that far in some places. So they don't have enough to release. So where are these rivers coming from? They're coming from underground or something, dude. Or from this land where the 4 rivers flow into and whatever.
I was going to say, springs emerge up. I mean, it's got to be a big spring. It's going to feed a river. It could be several feeding a lake that,
yeah,
into a river.
Now, what's the deepest hole that was dug on the earth? What's that? What's the deepest hole that's being dug on the earth?
I think that was a mine, right? Something like that.
Yeah, it was a mine. It was on the Kola Peninsula in Russia, and it took them 20 years to dig. What's that?
I said a mile, I think.
It took them 20 years to a
mile, I believe.
Repeat what you said.
Or a mile deep.
It's a mile deep.
Oh no, it was almost 12 miles deep, right? And then they couldn't get any further. The equipment started to fucking malfunction. So not even 12 miles, right? Now, the deepest part of the oceans is off the coast of the Philippines in the Marianas Trench. In 1977, they sent this submarine down, like super reinforced, called the Trieste, down to the deepest part of the ocean, right? At these crushing depths, right? Like you dive into the deep end of a pool and your ears start fucking pressing in, right? You feel the pressure from 8 feet of water. Can you imagine 7.5 miles of water? That's so what they found at the bottom of the ocean. Pardon me?
I said it's called barotrauma.
What is it?
Barotrauma. When you get traumatic
barometric pressure. Yeah.
It's barotrauma. It's trauma from pressure. That's what kills you quicker than drown. You don't drown in a submarine. You just die.
You're crushed to death, man. Yeah. So they didn't think they'd find anything at the bottom, but what they found is bioluminescent life forms living at these crushing depths, never to see light, right? So they always tell you every living thing needs the sun to live. Well, clearly that's not fucking the case that they proved in 1977 then. So you can throw that piece of shit of science.
If you are the light, then you don't need it.
Oh yeah, that's another deep topic, man, but we'll get there. But out of the bottom of the deepest parts, what did they find? They found fresh water coming out from the deepest part of the ocean. That's salt water, by the way. Okay, so there's water under the ocean, right? Now, that gets back to the first page of the Holy Scriptures, which you can tell if you have a counterfeit in the same line. It says, in the beginning, God created the heaven, singular, and the earth, and it was formless and void, right? Okay. So all the counterfeits have heavens. Now, it's not heavens, because if you read further down in the first chapter, it tells you when God made the three heavens, right? Right, the waters beneath, the waters above, and there's waters above the firmament, right? And that all the religious scholars misinterpret as the fucking sky, as the barrier between the near perfect vacuum of outer space and our gaseous atmosphere, which right away tells you no astrophysicist is doing basic grade 8 science, or 9 for that matter, where when you expose a gas to a vacuum, what happens is the pressures must be equalized on both sides. So if you have an endless near perfect vacuum and the earth, whatever shape it is, and all the fucking air on it, it's going to instantaneously be sucked out. Okay. This is a proven law of physics. Okay. So it's not that it's being sucked out, it's just being equalized. So it's kind of rushing in. So it just looks like it's getting sucked in, right? And everybody associates vacuum with what their mom runs over the shag carpet there, before company comes over. No, people don't pay attention to words. Okay, so anyway, it says that he divided up the stuff. Okay, now when you view stars, go out tonight, if it's a cloudless night where you guys are, take your cell phone camera and zoom in on a star and start video recording it, right? And then watch the video and enlarge it. And these things look like pool lights at the bottom of the friggin' pool, dude.
Did you see Saturn was fully visible, what was it, 2 days ago? It's pretty cool.
Yeah, but I don't know which fucking one it is. It's been a while since I took astronomy, right? So
Saturn's the one with the ring.
Yeah, Saturn. Yeah, I saw Saturn for myself, and I'll tell you how, right? I was 40 the first time I retired, so we screwed off to Florida for about 3 months. And one night we're walking back to the condo that we were renting, and this is, whatever. Well, I guess it's 15 years ago now, and there was this old dude, because everybody's old in Florida. It's God's waiting room. They retire, go there, wait to fucking die, right? But so he's unloading these plywood boxes out of the trunk of his car, right? So my kid's 6 years old. My other one's 8, and I say, okay, you guys run back to the condo. I'm gonna help this old dude unload his trunk, right? I say, excuse me, sir, can I give you a hand here unloading this stuff? He says, oh, no, thanks very much. He said, but this is very sensitive. I go, sensitive? I'm looking at plywood boxes, right? I go, sensitive, what is it? And he goes, it's a telescope that I built myself, okay? So, when he sets up all the boxes, it's, I don't know, about 8 feet long, and he puts the eyepiece in. Because telescopes are mirrors that reflect the stuff, and the thing that magnifies it is the eyepiece, like you would find in a magnifying glass or a jeweler's, gemstone viewer or whatever.
So he had built a reflector where you're looking.
Yeah.
And it bounces.
Yeah. So him and his retired astronomy buddies, they go out into the Everglades, which was about an hour from there. Where there's the least amount of light pollution from street lights and the city, because they're pretty isolated, so that the stars are more visible, so they can have a good time. They probably smoke weed and drink and fucking crack dirty jokes and all that shit. But it's cool looking at the stars, right? It's fucking cool. Everybody loves it, right? Nobody does it, but everybody loves it when they do. So I said to him, I said, well, listen, I said, do you ever set this thing up around the condos? And he goes, yeah, in about 3 weeks, I'm going to set it up because fucking Mars and Saturn are going to be visible, and it's going to be a full moon. I said, great. Just let me know down at the pool. I said, I'll be there. I want to see it. I want my kids to see. So we went 3 weeks later, and he goes, here, check this out. Check that out. Mars, I couldn't really get a good view at, but it was reddish. And, but Saturn, dude, it looked fake, like these silent movies you see from 100 years ago when they're faking a science fiction story. It just looked like it was hung on a black background, like it just looked fake to me. Something about, I was like, holy. And And the first time I wrote NASA, by the way, I was 6 years old. That's another story, right? So I've been looking into this shit for a while. So he also zoomed in on a full moon. And what I thought to do, I had this digital camera and I held it up to the eyepiece and I zoomed it in on the eyepiece. And he goes, "Hey man, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm just trying to get pictures of the moon here." And he goes, "Well, I don't know if it'll work." I go, "Well, we'll fucking see. It's a digital camera. I'm not developing film here, right?" So anyway, I downloaded the pictures to my computer. Dude, it was fucking amazing. All of these, what they call craters and meteorites, they're perfect circles basically. But what you could see on these pictures that I took off this guy that I randomly met in the parking lot's telescope was the craters. A lot of them were hitting on the edge of the craters. There'd be a series of smaller craters, so round circles on the thing. Well, that looks strangely like arc welding. When you take arc welding and the shit that flies off and and you zoom in on it, well, it looks like craters on the moon. And you have that same effect where there's little circles. So whatever the electrons are, whatever spark in the arc, and the trajectory of this. So it looks like arc welding. Now, why was I telling you guys this story? Okay, back to Adam and Eve. So God makes them. So what are they? They're carbon-based biological life forms that are running basically a computer program, right? Now, if they're in the environment made and programmed by God, then they're basically automatons enforcing the will and running the program that God's programmed them with, right? Like they can't do fucking bad in there. It wouldn't be programmed into them to fuck up shit. You know what I mean? Say that again.
I said that's pretty much a deterministic.
I didn't hear that. It broke up.
Pretty much a deterministic view, right?
Right. Okay. But you get where I'm going with this, right? Like, so you can understand how they would be carbon-based life forms programmed by God. So basically, they're fleshly automatons. Okay. Now, in order to give them free will, what would have to happen? They'd have to be presented with a choice, right? Either to continue to run the program of God or allow chaos, basically, into the program, thus enacting free will, which is sentience. They became sentient beings at the moment they sinned in order to enact free will, the ability to choose right or wrong.
What you're actually describing in the world of scripting and programming is making an AI. It's when you take a script and you get it to start learning from itself.
Right, but that's just
compounding and comparing upon itself. Right, and
adding more what?
Variables.
Yeah, you just add. You're compounding the variables for it to compound its own variables too, which is it's an easy concept to say, but when you really think about it, it's hard to put your brain around because that's what we do. That's how humans learn.
Right.
We learn this and then we learn that based off of that. And then we learn the next thing based off those last two things.
But was it you that said they got two supercomputers together and they started to write their own language and the scientists didn't fucking know and they had to shut it down? Right?
Right.
Okay.
That's pretty crazy.
So, but as smart as AI gets, it still doesn't get fucking humor and it still doesn't get, compassion, right? It's just running zeros or ones. It's still artificial.
It's
right?
not really programmed though.
So, but we're what we would call we're real for that, Now, do you think God can be the supreme being that made everyone and everything?
I mean, you just said we're running on machines almost. In a way, the only thing that separates us is our makeup with our biology. And if they're kind of made of carbon too, in a way, and then it's getting pretty similar. I mean,
it is, except we have free will, like we can decide, or at least what seems like free will to us.
So do you believe in free will then, Peter?
Yeah, I'm going to operate on that premise. You know what I'm saying? So because I can admit to myself, when I'm fucking evil, right? Like this is the problem that people don't admit, right? It's like when you get caught on the interstate speeding, right? The guy pulls you over doing $120, and you're like, well, dude, why'd you pull me over at 120? That guy passed us at 135, right? Like he's more guilty than me, right? Well, no, the law says at 100 you were, whatever the speed limit is. I'm doing it in kilometers here, right? Not 120 miles. Although I've got it up to 160 on the interstates there before. Nice roads. So everybody, like they still kind of limit how bad they are, or they don't want to admit it publicly how bad they are, right? Everybody thinks Hitler's a bad guy. And who's that guy in the jail with the swastika on his forehead? Charles Manson. Like, who even knows that fucking guy's real? All I ever see him is on the news every few years when he's up for parole. Like, how do I know they're not drawing that swastika on some actor's head, with a magic marker? And say, here, man, start foaming at the mouth, dude. Like, entertain the people.
On the note of knowing, I got to back up where you were just a second ago.
Sure.
On the idea of free will, and this is something that's always interested me, and it came from a joke, that was, it basically a joke says, and then man invented Satan because owning up to your own shit's just a little too difficult, or owning up to your own shit would which also brings in the idea of Lucifer and Yahweh, if you will, because that's really what we're talking, looking at in the Christian realm.
But I only speak English, so if it's in the English term, I'll know what you're talking. But I know I've heard that's the that Yahweh is one of the names of God, so no problem.
Right. That's
Jah is another one. Right?
Well, that's shortened Yahweh,
yeah.
So, but anyway, in those terms, you're looking at what's considered to be good and evil. And then, in a lot of Asian philosophy and most other philosophies like I follow, you don't actually discern what is good and evil. They both just are. The yin and yang, people are like, which is yin, which is yang. That's what the duality is. There's really no saying which is which. It's not one is evil and one is good. It's just they are the opposites there.
But we're already programmed with the knowledge of right and wrong in us, dude.
Right.
Like every kid, the first time he steals something, is sweating bullets, right? That that he's going to get caught. Or every kid that tells his first lie, is nervous looking around. He's all paranoid and shit, right? So
I think
we have that in us.
Well, I think as far as certain things, I don't know about theft. Theft is a real broad one that you almost have to be taught about, because a hungry animal doesn't think it's stealing something when it goes to take it, and if somebody's starving, a kid's starving, and he's never told that it's wrong to take something that somebody else has, he's not going to know that that's wrong. Now, going on the level saying things like murder, that I can go ahead and say that's inherent, because that's much more of a mortal thing.
Well, Neif, let me bust in here. You're talking about like the starving kid or the animal hypothesis there. Like, not hypothesis, but you're giving an example. That in that context, that actually, that isn't wrong in certain contexts, like socially, legally, but in the context of the person being hungry, it's not wrong.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. So therefore, that to say theft, I understand what you're saying. Theft is inherently, if you understand it as being theft. But if you don't understand it as being theft, and that goes back to saying it's the programming, it's how you are programmed. We've proven we can reprogram people to be raised to pretty much believe anything,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And all these people are programmed, and it's from God, and he programmed us all with unique sets of whatever. Let's say this is our husk, it's our body, it's our person, and then it has a unique set of a unique biology which heavily affects the way you interact and perceive reality, and then therefore are going to move forward based on those principles. And then once you interact with the world, given your unique predisposition from your biology, you're going to change and have different decisions and actions uh, uh, accordingly. And then carve synapses are gonna fire in different ways, and all these different things which would seem to be giving people the freedom of will is it seems to be like just more variables which add to the uniqueness of each individual, which helps everyone be completely unique. And then if
every
variable you control your desires, and that is inherently what you will enact upon in the end, which controls your actions. And then there's various things that control that as well, like your impulse control and your proclivity towards violence, or your upbringing, or many different things like that heavily influence each person and ultimately shape them into the kind of individual that they are. And the only reason why I say this is, like, really in that case, is there anyone who is truly morally detestable in that way? Because can you really hold them accountable? Like someone like Hitler, obviously we would do everything we could to stop him, even kill him if necessary, in order to stop him from causing more harm and destruction. But I see no need to hate him in like the deepest of your heart, because it's only causing you, discontent in the world for something like that. And really, he just so happened to be the kind of individual that was unfortunate enough to be shaped into the kind of person that did what he did.
Yeah. Now, who would have access to that kind of programming? Do you think supernatural beings, if they exist, would have access to that programming? Do you think super smart guys would have access to that programming?
I think we all have.
What's that?
I think we all have access to that programming, but not fully. We're all products of our surroundings and the people around you, but no one has complete manipulation over what you become.
Right. Kind of like if we all have the same operating system, but it don't have any bloatware or any other software dropped in it from the get-go.
I was just
and then you plug it up. Once you're born, you plug it up online and you just start downloading crap. If you're comparing it to a computer and automatron, everybody's going to a different website. Everybody's getting told to do different something crap. So everybody's gonna get different viruses, different apps, different this. They're gonna have different memory needs. They're gonna burn their system up quicker. So some people leave their monitors on all night. And they sleep. They never sleep.
Me and a friend of mine were just talking about personal responsibility, like taking responsibility for your actions. And we were talking about how, or I guess I was saying, what personal responsibility actually looks like is you have very little agency or control over what you are affected by, like what you take in. Now, you do have some control over that. You cannot go to some websites. You can choose not to interact with certain people to a certain degree, but you have a varying degree of control over how you are influenced. Now, you have a lot more agency over how you influence others.
How do you mean? How do you mean?
What you put out into the world has a strong impact on others potentially. You can vastly change other people's okay, let's talk about words for a second. Words I think you were talking about this, I think, in your last interview, I think. Words have magical
the power of words.
They can levitate things. They empower people to do things. The words don't have to have hands in order to make physical changes in the world. So so with that in mind, everyone can speak words for the most part. And if so knowing this, you have a strong amount of control over your surroundings and the people around you, because you can speak words.
But that's a double-edged sword, because that also means you're susceptible to other people's words.
Well, the power of death and life are in the tongue, right? Death and life are in the power of the tongue, right? That's a word. These words that I speak, they are spirit and they are truth. Like, you gonna touch them? You might feel them like some pressurized air molecules on your tympanic membrane as they come out of your speakers there, you know, and then they're gonna rattle around your little hammer and anvil, the smallest bones in your body, and that's going to transduce it into electrical signals, and you're going to perceive that and interpret it all up where your frontal lobe, your parietal lobe, and your temporal lobe all meet up, where your languaging center is, right? You know, and then you'll say some powerful words back to me, right? And each of them have a vibration, and if you have equipment, you know, sensitive enough, like, you can basically go back in time to measure this, right? So you're right. Like, these words that we release, they do influence things around us, right? And again, it's positive, negative. Yeah, lately there's all kinds of rages out there in the world that I find most of them don't even know the definitions of the words they use all the time, right? You know, like all these psychologists are talking about ego. Yeah, what's an ego, right? All these people are talking about the spirit. Dude, the most religious guy, I've asked the friggin' Pope, right, of the Orthodox Church. These guys have no fucking clue, right? Even the most staunch fundamentalists, they can't give you an explanation of spirit. Now, and then what's another one? You know, manifesting and this kind of stuff, whatever. So there's all these words, these buzzwords out there now. But what is a word? Words of vibration, right? Now, about 20 years ago, at my other shop, this guy came in from one of the former Soviet countries, and it might have been 25 years ago, you know, when the USSR was breaking down, communism was breaking down. So now we heard of all these countries we've never heard of before, right? So this guy was somewhere from deep in the USSR. And he's in the shop and we're talking. I ask him where he's from, you know, never heard of it. What city? Never heard of it. And he said, you won't hear of this city. I go, why not? He said, because everyone that worked at that city was a scientist of some sort. So he said, both my parents were scientists. So I lived there, but some of my friends, only one of their, you know, the mom or the dad were scientists. But they had everything self-contained in this science city. And I said, wow, man, you must have seen some really cool shit, like growing up and stuff, right? I said, tell me something about it. So he said one time, I don't know if his dad brought him in or whatever, he was in a laboratory and they had a test tube suspended and they were beaming sound waves into this water. And when it hit a certain frequency, in the center of the water would look like a miniature sun burning. All of a sudden, this you know, and there were no gas bubbles, so it wasn't a flame, there wasn't things like this, but light, this ball of light formed in the water. This is called sonoluminescence. Now, I don't know if the frequency is 528, but whatever it is, someone knows, right? Because they've tested all this shit. I mean, you guys could do this stuff, man. Like, just set up a test tube of water and start fucking around with the frequencies one night, right? And
next time y'all come over,
you know, with the lights out.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, this is science. Like, everybody should be doing it, right? So anyway, the guy's telling me about this. Now, this wasn't at a time I read the Holy Scriptures. You'll never find an atheist bigger than me. And I'm not a Christian, by the way. But I believe what it says in there. I believe I'm a child of the Most High God, like it says to be, right? Christians is another one of these misnomers that all the religious guys, they all miss it. So, right? In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was formless and void, right? And then I think it's the third line, I'm not sure. It says, let there be light. And there was light.
What do you think
okay.
Is Judgment Day?
Well, if that's not sonoluminescence, I don't fucking know what is, man. And 3 days later, according to the story, he made the sun and the moon and the stars and put them in the firmament. So whatever structure that is, they're in it. Lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. And the stars he made also, right? And they were given for some times and seasons, right? Which is how we measure the fucking calendars for thousands of years, right? You can do it from the sun. You can navigate, or from the stars, you can navigate. These constellations never change, which is why the globe theory that they jam down our throats doesn't fucking work. You can't be on a fucking spinning sphere orbiting around a fucking sun where the whole fucking solar system is in one arm of the Milky Way, and the Milky Way is revolving, and it's orbiting around some galactic center that nobody's ever fucking seen, nobody ever will, because it doesn't exist. All of these structures that they show us in a low gravity is just a theory, by the way, but in a low G environment, if you take dust particles and when you hit that low G and you look at them, they form like little swirling galaxies, and it looks like little planets going around, orbiting around shit, like out of fucking dust and pieces of dirt, dude. So what they show us, they're all artists' renderings. But anyway, you can't have all of that through millions and billions of years and still have the friggin' pyramids lined up to Polaris and all the other stars that supposedly lined up. That would move. Now they need that theory in order to go back to the formation of the Earth, to the Big Bang. Everything has to come out of nothing in order for us to sit, and a random series of events have to fucking happen perfectly in order for us to be sitting here having this conversation now, right? So anybody that knows anything about permutations and combinations and probabilities or actuary math immediately knows this is so fucking far-fetched. It's mind-boggling.
Well,
like, this is a load bump.
This is as big as we think, and it's seemingly infinite, then it's really not so mind-boggling that those kind of variables would line up in some of the universe.
Dude,
many scientists actually think there's been several Big Bangs, which created different universes, and that it wasn't just one.
Dude, every other week they come up with different theories, man.
Well, it's also,
like every other week.
When
right?
you get to the idea of to jump from the early theories and jump into more modern day where people, almost everybody will tell you, and the mathematicians back this up also, about alien life. They say because of the vastness, there is no way that we are the only ones capable of ever popping up. There has to be other life out there, because if it is as vast as it says it is, if all of this is the way it is, there's no way that just randomly this one planet and all the billions of countless fucking systems with billions of countless fucking planets in them, this didn't happen somewhere else. All right. If we can establish that and say, okay, cool, we can work with that. Scientifically, on the same realm speaking, there is no way that with what we know about travel, that we could ever travel to one of those, because everything is moving. So if we'd have found it, by the time we find it, it's already gone, and we're already gone from that position. And by the time we launch, there's no way we could triangulate a coordinate to anything. There's no way we could ever find another planet to land on it, because the minute we take off to go get it, it would take us forever to get there. So you're also going against the idea of that's a big argument against alien theory. Well, if aliens are here, they're on some other level of travel that is so far beyond us. Now, if they're on that kind of technology, why in the fuck are they here?
Oh, have you seen that?
Why have that just annihilated or enslaved us already?
Video that's been released by the Navy. It was a declassified video of this, and it was one of the generals of the Navy. He's like one of the top 3 guys in the Navy. I forgot his position, but it shows the UFO come out of the water and then just dart around back and forth, instantly stopping in different positions, and then disappear on radar here, and then reappear on radar. It was like miles away. It was super far in an instant.
Neif, see if you can pull that up.
Okay.
And in order for that to
that's something we could show, Neif, if you can get me a link.
The only theory that really makes sense so far, to my knowledge, is that if it had its own gravitational field, which would allow it to cut through the air at a much faster rate, unaffected by it, Because if it was just like the G-force, if you were just in a normal aircraft, you would just be turned to mush, like bouncing around, going that fast.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's been several
and
several videos like this coming out that's been declassified and through many other people filming them from around the world.
Now, but why does that have to come from outer space? Like, why can't that be reverse engineered off the fucking Incas or the fucking Egyptians?
Well,
Stuff we have evidence of. What's that?
Reverse engineered from what? Like an advanced earlier civilization?
From this technology that guys who had 900 fucking years to live could have designed. You know what I mean? They're not going to tell you that in class.
Do you think there's not
Right?
do you think there's not an outer space?
No, not the way they tell us. If it's anything, it's fucking water, like I videotape it to be. You know, but who's going to believe me, right?
Basically.
You know. Well, like this is how it appears, right? And this is actually coincidentally how it matches the Holy Scriptures if you're reading the code properly, which again, religion never does, right? They don't even read it the way it says in the Holy Scriptures to read it.
So that's why,
let alone fucking understand.
So
what's that?
So that why the sky is blue is because it's actually all water above.
Sky's blue because it's like a neon bulb, like, you know, when you excite those argon gases and shit, like in a neon bulb, right? If the sun's electric, then as the electricity approaches the fucking gases, it starts lighting them up in different colors, the purples, the blues, the golds, you know, all this kind of stuff, right? Everything we've been taught is fucking total bullshit. And all you need to disprove it all is high school science.
You could do the math from
what's that?
You could do the math from the time that the light has to travel from itself to the earth and then through the atmosphere and then reach us. And if it was completely water in space, would heavily impede the rate at which it would reach us. You should be able to to formulate that.
All right. Okay. So, but here's the thing: you and everybody else operates on the programming you've been given in school. So your concept of space comes from comic books and movies and science fiction and fucking television, you know, and whatever they teach you since you're a kid, right? They'll show you a cartoon of the solar system and fucking dinosaurs, right? And you're a kid, you believe that shit, right? So,
well,
cartoons are
eyewitness accounts and pictures of people, like, so I mean, whenever we see NASA photos and stuff, you think it's, I guess, doctored or CG.
Well, I won't tell you what I think. I'll just tell you what's in the small print on every fucking picture that all of us have seen in an astronomy magazine or textbook or press release. It says, this is an artist's rendering or a composite image. So it's not fucking real.
I mean, on something.
A radio telescope doesn't measure fucking colors. It measures fucking frequencies or whatever.
So I found
right?
footage.
All right, can you hand me with the link real quick?
I gotta pull it up. You want to just
Oh, I can just let you share screen. Okay.
Yeah.
Who's that broad? Who's that? That's David's great grandmother. David, you didn't know your great grandmother, but there. Neif pulled up a picture of her.
How dare you?
You should know
who
that
is she?
woman.
Now this
Voltairine.
declassified footage.
Yeah, this is let me
I'm trying to figure out how to let you share. Let's see here.
But this declassified footage you're talking about, I think Bill Cooper talked about in his book, Behold the Pale Horse, because he was in there. He saw some of this shit and he wrote about it. So whether it's disinformation or not, I don't know.
Can you share?
I mean, but it's not just
because it's all a private club, right?
All around.
You got to give me permission.
A long time.
Do you know how to do that?
For what?
These kind of crap.
It should be under where yours says screen share. You should have a little marker there. It gives you an option. Or it might be in the participants.
Try it.
I'm talking to Alex.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, man, don't ask me.
There we go.
But yeah, so we all operate on this concept of.
Okay, so this is this the you're talking about me or David? Yeah, I just called you Neif. Close enough.
Okay, so I'm looking at an enlarged image of a tangerine skin. Okay,
that's a really nice tangerine. Like they don't make them like that anymore.
This might be kind of loud
it could be
when
waves.
they start talking on the radio.
It could be waves.
We don't have your. Yeah.
I can see it. I can see. You know, it's all official looking with these numbers and stuff like that, right? Like, remember, our minds are being controlled. Hey, there's one of those ships from Star Wars. The bad guys fly right in the middle. Look at that. What a coincidence. So what are these guys just shooting close-ups of the fucking ocean because they got nothing better to do with our tax dollars? Like, what's going on here?
I mean, you can look into the details of the mission. They go into it. Actually, the general went on Joe Rogan.
Is that the thing? Is that the UFO there? Is that the UFO?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of them. They're talking on the radio right now. I don't know if it's coming through. I got to kind of turn down because it's kind of loud.
I can't hear anything. But what I'm looking at here looks like it could be something from a 1920s silent film where they're trying to, like, there's nothing conclusive about that to me.
Again,
you know,
that's not the only video. And if you want more details about the operation, the general went on Joe Rogan's podcast and he went on there for like 2 or 3 hours and pretty much disclosed everything that he knows about the operation, and then gives details about other crafts from different military operations that you can go and look into, and even millions.
So but here's the thing I want you guys to consider, because I forget which one of you were saying that we're basically programmed and stuff like that, right? So now everything we ever see, hear, touch, taste, smell, that's all fucking remembered in our mind, in our brain, in our mind, in our memory, right? Wherever the memory is, it's encoded there. Now, we don't have access to every thing, thankfully, because it'd be so fucking boring and you'd never get to do anything because you're reviewing in fucking microscopic detail your entire life. So that is contained in our brains, but not everyone has the ability to call it up at certain times. So we're always being programmed by everything. So what I want you guys to be is just like, however you got your intelligence or your programming, just use your fucking common sense and your proprioceptics, your empirical senses, like, what you see, what you touch, what you taste. So just imagine that it's your first day on Earth. Like, so you guys just fucking appeared here. So you don't know the history of the world, nothing. All you know, you can see, you can eat, you can whiz, this kind of stuff. So just view the world from that. If I ask you guys, if I say, is the moon, point to the moon in the sky, or whether it's day or night, and say, is the moon moving? What are you guys going to tell me?
Well, okay, here's the thing.
You're going to say, yeah, it's moving, right?
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
So there's one end of it that, like, you hear the term conspiracy theory thrown around a lot, and with a negative connotation. People use that in a negative connotation when they say that.
Yeah.
That is.
I'll tell you the first.
That is a sort of an Orwellian thing to do, where you're devaluing the sort of legitimate conspiracies thrown in with some less credible ones. You're saying all conspiracies are on the same level of this absurdity, right? But there's the other end of this too, where it's like,
well, guys,
you need
like,
to not
what we're doing here tonight is a conspiracy.
Well, do you have?
No, but we're conspiring right now.
So what I'm getting at is
we're conspiring to put on a program that's informative and that we're having fun at. Like, that's my conspiracy, right? But by the definition of the word, and the importance of words, you got to know what conspiracy is, right? So
it's an important
like back in the,
there's
important what?
it's important not to fall into the trap of, oh, it's a conspiracy theory, so I shouldn't put any validity into it. Like you're saying, you're saying you shouldn't believe everything you're taught because sometimes you're not taught what you're taught is
no, I'm just saying test it. I'm just saying test it.
Well, I mean, yes, I agree with you.
Well, does it seem correct?
On the other end of that, not everything I'm taught, not everyone I hear from has a reason to be dishonest with me. I don't have a reason to question everything I'm taught. Now,
yeah, but they don't know if they're running the program. If they're running the program they're given, the indoctrination, they don't even fucking know they're bullshitting you. Okay, it's like these memes that get weaponized on the internet.
Okay,
like the meme comes out and it has a life of its own, right?
Well, I don't know anything at all. I don't know that I don't know that David exists. I don't know that you exist. All I know, I think therefore I am.
Yeah, so let's just assume
that's all I have to go on. Yeah. That's all I have to go on.
Yeah. Oh, well,
I don't really know that when I take a step.
Okay, so yeah.
That if I don't really 100% know that if I put a foot in front of a foot, that I'm going to start walking. I don't really know that. Make an assumption that is what will happen.
Yeah.
Because that's already because based on my prior experience, right? So I don't know fucking anything. So I have to make assumptions about my reality based on observation.
Well, that's a great example, Alex, because what you're talking about there, and this is where things break down, and this goes right back to the power of words, which is also the weakness of words, is that it turns into semantics. Because like you're saying, you don't know that you're going to walk, okay? The term walk means the action of what you're doing, but what walking truly is a controlled fall. You hang your foot out and you lose balance and tip forward and you land on it, and you do it over and over again. As you're a child, you learn to
not on the video footage they're showing me.
That's what I'm saying. So say that again. As a child, you learn that on your own to control that. So you learn that you're told that is walking. So
right.
What I think what Peter's really saying is you can call it whatever you want to call it, but what you're saying, Alex, is it doesn't matter if you call it this or that, and somebody tells you, you're still going to learn it, and it's still going to happen. That's kind of what I had gotten at that same question, Peter, about that is I can, and Ledetto brought that up too with me online about electronic theory. I said, I'm down with Tesla and questioning all of it too, but when I design things, I don't have anything else to go by except what I've been taught, and nobody else has handed me.
Yeah, it works.
It works. Well, the point I'm getting at is I'm the last person to be a government bootlicker. I know they feed us bullshit. That's a big.
Oh yeah. No. I'm not making any assumptions of you.
That's a big part of what we talk about. Is like I know you weren't. I know you weren't trying to. That's not what I was saying. I'm just saying, like I'm the last person to accept what we've been taught. However, and I'm also when we were talking about NASA and photographs, I'm fully aware that there are a lot of artist renditions of the Earth and stuff. There's also proposed from NASA photographs of from satellites of different planets and stuff. Now,
good thing you bring that up.
I don't believe that everything we're taught is true, but I also don't believe everything we're taught is false. I think you have to take it with a grain of salt. That doesn't mean.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Take it with a grain of salt.
Right.
So
now, how does NASA benefit from faking deep space photos? What is the conspiracy here? Why would they?
Okay. All right. Okay. I'll tell you this. I'm 6 years old. I'm in grade 1, and there's some guest speaker there, right? And the guy's standing at the front of the class, and he's telling 6-year-olds that he's from some company, CNCP, whatever it was, that are building towers right across coast to coast from Canada, which is like easy 5,000 miles, right? Like it's bigger than America. Or at least so they tell us. I don't know. I didn't fucking check for myself, right? So I got to go that Canada's bigger than America, but who the fuck really knows? America looks bigger to me when I drive around down there. So, but I don't know. So now he says they're building these things across. Now, what the fuck are you telling 6-year-olds this for, right? But he goes on to say that there's these satellites now in outer space, and that from outer space, these satellites can read the time on your watch. Now, I'm the only kid in class with a friggin' watch, right? Because I lived in a rough neighborhood. My dad said, you know, you got to be home by this time, so he got me a watch. Anyway, so I look down at my watch and I go, wow, like what else is a 6-year-old supposed to fucking say, right? The guy just told you there's satellites out in space that from fucking outer space, you already want to be an astronaut.
What year was that,
like,
Peter?
You know,
you remember what year that was?
71 or 72, probably 72, because I would have been 6 still, turning 7 later.
All right,
so
I'm just checking for reference.
Yeah.
That brings up something.
Go ahead. What did you want to interject there?
With the satellite, I knew a very, very dear friend of mine. He's not with us anymore. One of the most intelligent men I ever met. He had a colleague of his in college. My buddy Jim, he's actually the guy who wrote the originally when dial tone switched to dial tone instead of pulse, you know, and you clicked. He's the one he wrote that for Bell Labs. His buddy in college with him went to work for the CIA and told him, and this is early 80s, their satellites had already had the capability to read the reflections, the vibrations of window panes. And his buddy was writing the script. His buddy was writing the script for a computer to discern all those vibrations and separate them so they can listen to a conversation in a room off of a window that out of outer space. And that was 1981.
Yeah.
So, you know,
I think that's how they busted friggin' Nixon at Watergate, right? With laser beams instead.
Right. So, I mean, when you got that, you're going, well, we're at least got the capability to stick something in the air like that.
Right. Yeah, this is what I'm saying. I'm just not saying they're in outer space, and I'll tell you why. So he says they got these satellites and they can read the time. So, you know, I'm checking out my thing. I'm already a scientist. I don't even fucking know, right? And then he says, you know, if you want, you can write NASA and they'll send you the launch schedule for the next year or two of all the satellites that they're scheduled to put up in space, right? So I think I'm the only 6-year-old that actually fucking wrote the letter. And they sent me the schedule, right? You know, Telstar, Telsat, whatever they were all fucking called, for 18 months, right? And, you know, so they have devices that are measuring this shit. That's clear and obvious. I'm not arguing against that. But what the fuck's this guy doing in a grade 1 class saying this shit? Like, unless he's schnooping the teacher on the side, like they met at ladies' night and fucking, you know, whatever. They want a quickie in the fucking staff room. I don't know, right? Like, who the fuck knows, right? But like, think of this. What the fuck is this guy doing there? But anyway, I take him up on his fucking advice and I write NASA and get this shit. Well, dude, I knew all that friggin' shit. Except, you know, when you start doing the calculations on your own on the supposed launch speed, right, of what the escape velocity of a rocket is, it's 25,000 miles an hour. Okay, let me give you some reference here. A bullet out of a high-powered rifle goes 1,700 miles an hour. Now, you can't see that when you're looking at it, right? No matter how far you get, you know, the best you'll see is a fucking blur, maybe. But in the nighttime, that bullet's traveling so fast, it heats up the air, it gives a glow, and they look like little laser beams shot out of the fucking Imperial Stormtrooper on the fucking Death Star in the original Star Wars, right? Where they're pew, 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 and they're trying to get, you know, Chewbacca, who happens to be a Bigfoot, flying a fucking Millennium Falcon, right? You know, him and, you know, like everybody misses this shit. So whether it's predictive programming, I don't put it past them. But it seems as though it may be.
What do you think?
But it also might be fucking true. They're mocking you. There's Bigfoots. Everybody knows it. Everybody's seen them. A couple guys have shot them, but let's discredit that there's Bigfoots.
There's,
you know, because, you know,
there's a lot of people that have been to space or low orbit. I mean, what do you do with those accounts? It's not just government people that have been to space at this point. There's a lot of people.
Dude, if you take a fuck, But if you take a beer can and put it in a vacuum, suck all the air pressure out of it, what happens to the beer can? It fucking explodes, man, all inside the bell jar. Like, so you have no pressure on the outside. You have this thin fucking aluminum can that's fully sealed, that the pressure that's removed causes the pressure contained within it to exert a force to blow the fucking can to smithereens.
It's also it's kind of it's the opposite of going underwater. You know, a submarine that goes under pressure. You know,
I mean,
so instead of getting crushed,
what a lot of people don't realize is outer space is considered to be outer space. We have so many spheres going out in our atmosphere. Even when the dude from Red Bull jumped, he wasn't actually in outer space. He was way below.
Dude, that was totally fake.
You know, it was way below outer space.
Totally fake.
Well, regardless, what I'm saying is the satellites, to say they're in space, to say they're here or there, there's so many realms of what they explain the atmosphere is, which is how they explain
you don't have to go to space to see the curve of the Earth. You can be at high altitude.
Dude, any curve is attributed is attributed to the lens that you use.
Right.
And I'll tell you what, good thing you brought that Felix Baumgartner jump up, right? Because when he went up to however many thousand feet or miles, whatever it was, 30 miles, who the fuck knows? They show him when he's sitting in there, right, with the little camera there, and the hatch of this craft that he's going up in opens up. Now, whatever the lens of that camera is, shows the horizon in the distance for untold hundreds of miles.
I'm not talking
about perfectly fucking level.
I mean, I'm just.
No, it's perfectly level.
I'm talking about your eyeball.
Perfectly level.
Like
no, we'll get to
high altitude. Right? You can see the curvature of the Earth. And I mean, like, I've never been to space, but I don't really buy this argument of like.
You got to watch the video.
Yeah,
you got to watch. Neif can probably call it up. The Red Bull
What's
jump.
That though?
And you'll see it when he's in the thing. The kid.
Okay, so the other thing, like, there's the argument of you don't really know something unless you've done the experiments yourself. Well, I mean, you don't discussed knowing earlier. You don't really even know that. You don't even really know your own observational data. You don't really know shit.
Well,
in terms of knowing.
Yeah, sure. Put it to the test, dude.
So if I'm going to trust myself to know things, I don't see any reason why I shouldn't trust David or Neif to know things, because I know them and I trust them. If they tell me something,
okay, well, but
I should be able to trust that pretty much as well as I trust myself if I actually have.
Yeah, well, okay, yeah. Trust whoever you want. Like, because you're right, he has no reason to lie. It's his first day on Earth, and he's looking at the moon go across the sky, like you, me, and Neif, right? You know what I'm saying? So now everybody sees the moon and everybody agrees that the moon is moving. Now, whether it's us moving under the Earth or the moon moving there, people are in agreement that the moon moves. But if you ask the same people, does the sun move? What does everybody say?
I wouldn't see why they'd say anything different.
Everybody says no. Yet everybody sees basically the same sized object in the same arc of the sky doing the exact same thing of the moon. And they say the moon's moving, but the sun's not. But then they immediately say, well, that's because we're moving and the sun's not, so it looks that way to us.
Okay.
And the math will exactly corroborate that. The math is in agreement with that.
When we're talking about space now, we're at a point in technology now where we're not just talking about the government and lies the government feeds us. A lot of people, including civilians, have been to space supposedly. I do not buy that all of the people who proposed this are on a collective conspiracy to keep that under wraps for the layman.
What Alex is talking about is one of the major arguments in the scientific community when it comes to that, because
that's impossible. That's statistically impossible for all of these people to be on the same page about.
And what you end up with is
but here's the thing. Like, get back to the story.
If I go to space, they put me in a rocket and I get up to space and I'm like, holy shit, the Earth is flat. and there's water in space, and they're like, we're going to give you $1 billion to never talk about this. The first thing I'm going to do is come on my podcast and talk about, holy shit, guys, guess what I just saw? Like, I'm not like that. There's going to be that guy. That's going to exist.
There's a way to test it for yourself, actually. If you have a boat and another friend who's willing to test it with you, you'll go ahead and go with him. If you're on a wide enough body of water, then your friend can stay here with a long range camera lens. And if it can really stay on the ship, and you can get long range enough cameras for that, you'll notice as the bow, the top of the ship is, slowly going to be covered from the bottom up, which is what would happen as you slowly go over the horizon and over the roundness.
That's just perspective.
Dude,
well, this also goes back to probably the oldest device for navigation, which is a sextant. And a sextant wasn't used for the stars. It was used to navigate off of the sun. And that's exactly how it was done, because you had mirrors and it reflected, and you looked and you saw the curvature because of the length of the sky, and it was done off mathematics. That's where science says, look, we'll take all day long, we'll take your words and throw them out the window and say people have been talking bullshit. The thing that separates that is numbers, and not just numbers as a symbol, because you can write a number and make it look like whatever, but math as a practice. It doesn't matter if you call two or you call it blah. This and this makes 2. You see it, it's there, it exists. So the scientific community, it's one of those like things, a lot of people get really irked in it, because the same idea, saying questioning everything, it gets thrown back in our face of saying, well, you're not questioning everything. And it's like, well, you have to have a basis of something to come off of.
Right.
So once you say this is all bullshit, you really have to start going backwards and say, okay, let's go all the way back. Let's go all the way back. Because you can always say,
well, I mean, that's exactly
argue that the Earth was the center of the universe.
There's a concept called solipsism, which I think you're really getting at here, which is the belief that, I am the only living existing thing, and everyone else is some sort of NPC, generated.
Dude, it might be, man. It might be. Right?
Well, I mean, it certainly could.
But
the Truman Show.
If you can't, I mean, I'm with you. It definitely could be that. But if you can't even establish that other people exist, I mean, you have no foundation for reality or how to navigate it.
Well, it doesn't matter, because you just have to think that.
I mean, nothing matters if you want to.
So whether you're projecting your own universe.
Yeah. I mean,
and if you're going to do any projecting, make me a little fucking taller. Make me a little taller.
I think it's, just like that. It goes back to practicality. I mean, we can sit and argue till we're blue in the face about who knows what, but when it comes to practice, like I'm saying.
Then let me get back to the numbers about
electrons might not exist, but when I design circuitry, that's the only thing that I know to explain
works. That. Yeah, it works good enough for you to build.
And if y'all can give me something else, I'd be glad to take it. And nobody has gone and followed the edge of the ice wall all the way around the Earth to prove that we're behind a big ice wall and it's not round.
Except for that ship that clocked 69,000 miles, right?
Yeah, there's a ship that continually circles the Earth if you got enough money to buy a damn a fucking spot on it.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, well,
this is the thing, right? Neif, you made a good point. No one's made that expedition to find the ice wall to prove that the Earth is flat. However,
but there was a ship that did, right? There was a ship that actually did. But anyway, that's a different story. I'm not arguing the shape of the Earth.
I was just gonna say, however, there have been plenty of people to go to space to prove that that's not the case.
Well, listen. Also, the Red Hot Chili Peppers might be right when they say space may be the final frontier, but it's filmed in a Hollywood basement. Like, they're right. They're fucking telling you. It's all fake, man. It is all fucking fake. So now, you guys are now biological units that have rejected all the fucking overlaid programming, yet you retain the programming, the operating system. Okay, so you have senses. You have ability to do math and think and all this other shit, but you don't have any fucking stories, right? So now, basically, you see these two lights in the sky, that do the exact same thing and are about the exact same size, yet we all, with the programming, think that one's moving but one's not. Now, back to the bullets in the nighttime. So they look like laser beams, 1,700 miles per hour. Okay. What is escape velocity, I told you before, of the Earth, apparently, whatever shape it is, to outer space? 25,000 miles. So a 1,700 mile per hour bullet that when it's launched in the night, shot in the night, looks like a fucking laser beam blur. 15 times that speed is what a rocket needs to go in order to do the Werner von Braun calculation to reach escape velocity to get out of here. Okay? Have you ever seen a fucking rocket launch even as fast as a fucking bullet from a high-powered rifle?
It's telling
and then when you do the calculation,
what are you saying on velocity? Because velocity is usually in
escape velocity of the Earth.
11.19 kilometers a second.
Right. So that's about 7 miles a second. So 420. What is that?
Let's see. MPH is 36. Wait, let's see. Yeah, 25,000 miles per hour.
Okay, so that's the escape velocity, right? And that's exactly what you should do. You should check it, right? Don't believe me, right? So now, when have we ever seen a rocket launch from Cape Kennedy, Cape Canaveral, whatever the fuck you call it, or anywhere for that matter, that is even going half the speed of a fucking bullet from a high-powered rifle? And escape velocity, it's got to be like 33 Gs or something, what they tell us. Say that again?
So you should be able to do the math.
33 Gs, you might as well go scuba diving at the bottom of the sea. It's that fucking crushing.
That's why they test on the things that spin them around like crazy to be able to deal with that kind of pressure and not fast.
Oh, yeah. That's fucking Hollywood again. It's Hollywood. It's Hollywood. Because that thing's not even going 90 miles an hour. Like, how am I training at 90 miles an hour doing circles for 33 fucking Gs when the average human passes out at 3 or 4 Gs and the trained high, those fighter jet pilots and supposed astronauts, they pass out at 8 or 9. Who the fuck's living through 33 Gs? Like, nobody, man. And even Werner von Braun, when he does the tyranny of the rocket equation, that's the father of modern day rocketry. So they tell us, that Nazi that they got over here on Operation Paperclip after the war, right? This guy said you couldn't build a rocket big enough to contain the amount of fuel to propel it to these speeds to get it high enough up to get it out, because 90% of the weight for this would be the fucking rocket and the fuel, which leaves 10%. So the more fuel you add for more speed, the heavier it gets, right? So the bigger the rocket has to be. So this is, you could go on a TED Talk and watch the tyranny of the rocket equation. So scientists are all smug and they kind of joke about this, but it's like, no, do the fucking math that you claim to know how to do, and then tell me if fucking rocketry, the way they tell us, is even fucking possible. Well, forget going to the moon and back without a fucking bathroom.
That would have to be the biggest conspiracy almost ever, because all the people who work at space, all the people who work at NASA, all the people who work at Bezos's space, which a lot of them are civilians. Which a lot of them.
No, but go to the guy Neif was just talking about. Go to the guy. I know what you're saying. Go to the guy Neif was talking about. That friend of his, who's his university friend, was writing code for satellites.
It's not just
whether he thinks they're in outer space or in the bottom of his pool, doesn't matter. He's still getting paid to write the codes. Once he ships off the codes, he doesn't know where the fuck they're going. He has no idea. All you got to do is
that's based around the same thing I talk about with the medical industry. It's the same thing I talk about with the medical industry, but the foundation with that is the medical industry has money to gain. You could say NASA has money to gain from the government for BSing us all about this stuff, but at the same time, they don't, you don't get as much money. Also, a lot
But
of this
just
stuff,
watch.
when you think about the medical technology, and that's one of the major things that has gotten everybody so like science is complete bullshit, that they've been BSing us about everything, is the medical industry. Because the medical industry is not fucking science. Sorry, it ain't. It's denying science to a fucking umpteenth degree. It has nothing to do with any of the other practices at all. All right?
Right.
If anything it does, it's countering them against it. When you talk about things like astrophysics, or even basically, it's not even astrophysics. We're talking about physical science. We're talking about physics.
Yeah.
You're going so far back that one of the things is a conspiracy. I can absolutely believe that NASA fuckers don't know what the hell is really going on, and there's a handful of people, and yada yada. Everybody talks to the banks here. But Russia, who actually despises us, China, who actually despises us, Korea, who everybody pretty much despises us, are not going to. Russia would be the first people to come out and say, hey, y'all, guess what America's been fucking keeping under their hats for all these years? This ain't right, this ain't right, this ain't right.
If they're fleecing their own people, no, but they're taking the tax money from their own people.
This isn't even government. Okay, I don't know. This isn't restricted to government people, though. There are civilians.
Right. Well, I mean, that too. You got Virgin Records. He's been trying to get people into space for ages, and they've been shooting him. Musk just got done. They just got done.
Because he's in on the racket. He's in on the racket.
Well,
what do you say about going over the horizon and the boat disappearing? You can watch it disappear just like it.
No, it's David. It's perspective. It's like this. It's like when you're driving down a long straight road, you got telephone poles on the same side of the road, right? And in the distance, they look like they're converging and disappearing and becoming equal with the horizon. Right, this is the vanishing point. Right?
It's not just.
It's perspective. It's perspective. I'm telling you. I mean, but again, I'm not arguing the shape of the Earth here.
Right. I mean, that's just jumping down that little spot. I'm trying to really talk about the idea of when you get into the blanket question of science, just for the sake of questioning it, you know, it kind of goes with like what Alex was talking about. Yes, if you want to say, let's question it all, they're all in on the act, well, then you have nothing to foundate on. And anything that we would know, and this will tell you this right here, stealth bomber technology, that came from the Nazis, right? We just found out about that in the 80s because it got declassified. So that means, and this I've known since I was a child, anything we have technologically, all right? And I know this as an engineer, anything we have technologically, our government, which is our military, is at least 10 to 20 years ahead of that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so in saying that, there's no way around it. So anything that we think we figured out, we're fucking already where we got bullshitted on that too. If you think you figured it out because you went to a library and read a book, well, they control that. If you log online and watch some video, they control that. Yeah, so nothing that we're even bringing up could even be is we have no foundation.
Well, but again, we
know
how to do basic math.
Right. Now, one thing I know is if like you brought up a good point about your friend building a telescope. I've looked at Saturn and the Dyer Observatory here. It's a great observatory, really kick-ass telescopes, and I saw Saturn with its rings and everything. Beautiful.
Yeah. It looks unreal.
There's a corner of my brain. There's a corner of my brain that says, well, you know, there's a possibility that these dudes could all be in on it too, and that was a fucking slide they shoved in there. Or maybe they're not in on it, but the factories that built this thing is, and they're just shooting the data down. So they're like, we're going to look at Saturn today, and they punch in the numbers and it moves, and that's just BS, and it projects it on there. But if I build a telescope myself, I can look at it. Yeah, and that's what original scientists were. Right. An original scientist did not get paid by anybody. They wanted to find out on their own. And what happened was when they figured out the shit was wrong, they got murdered. Because it went against somebody's thing. Or they got told, hey, y'all, the earth ain't the center of the earth. And the church said, fuck this dude. So then you got religion backing up things. And then you get back into the age-old argument of science and religion. both of which can and are used to control the populace.
Yeah. But here's the thing. The Holy Scriptures say, warn about science falsely so called. Why would it be written that way? Science falsely so called. So God is for science. He has to be. Look at his mathematics.
He's also against false prophets.
I mean, well,
yes,
he's also
exactly.
against false prophecy. Be warned of false prophecy.
Yes.
And a translation of the Bible could be argued to be false because it's a digital representation with new language.
Because, hey, listen, the Bible's part of all. You got to put that in the test too.
If we're going to be talking about the Bible, why would we not use the same metric on it? Like we don't know who wrote that. That could have been written.
Yeah.
It could have been written 300 years ago.
I mean, I know a Catholic teacher and theologist that told me he didn't know what the fuck I was talking about when I said Sanskrit. I said, wasn't the original one written in some like Sanskrit? Or he was like, I don't even know what that is, man. But he might have just been writing me off on that because he's a Catholic taught. According to him, Aquinas was a fucking genius because he discovered all these methods of real philosophy, but he was a fucking Catholic. He was part of the goddamn church. So how in the hell am I supposed to believe Aquinas?
But here's the thing. The guy that exposed religion is the protagonist of the Holy Scriptures. Jesus Christ exposed religion for a business, dude, and they conspired to kill him.
Well, in the second one, in the first one, Lucifer was the one who did it, the father of light, the light bringer. He gave man knowledge.
That's what his name means.
He said, your God is forsaking you. He's bullshitting you. He feels he's above you. He threw me out of heaven because of this. I want to give you the ability to see the truth. Bam.
Here's the great irony to Jesus exposed. He flipped over the tables and whenever they were doing that. Here's the great irony of that is since he died, Christianity has become even more so about commercialism.
Yes.
Oldest, largest business in the world is the Catholic Church.
So he did expose it, but they forgot about it.
Yeah.
They forgot about that part. It's all about money.
Well, yeah.
Organized.
So it's all about money and control and whatever, right? So that, like, when I quote the scriptures or talk about God, don't confuse me for being religious, right? So, but here's a way to measure distances, or what they tell us the distances are fucking bullshit, right? You look at the moon, and you can see some of those crater formations in the dark part. They call one some ancient seabed or whatever. This crater, Tychus or Tychicus, whatever the fuck it is. It's about 50 miles wide from one edge to the other. And you can see this with the naked eye, right? So now, if you could get high enough over the curvature of the earth, or whatever shape you guys want to believe it is, if you can get high enough to see from here to Russia, so like, I don't know, 6,000 miles, let's say, like, we might be able to make out a 50-mile wide lake, right? On a clear day and whatever else, right? Now, the moon is 250,000 miles away, they tell us, 250,000 miles away. So when you divide 50 into whatever, or the other way around, you get such a low number. You can't see this fucking thing with the naked eye if they're the distances that they're telling us, right?
So
it's like watching that.
Is that taking into context the size
and how far the light travels?
Well, the size of the moon. I mean,
Dude,
it's fucking huge. It's
So
okay, run the probability on. Go ahead.
So I can see that Alice is getting sleepy and it's past her bedtime. So I want to do something we always do on the show. That's tradition. I'm gonna make a hard segue, Peter, and I want to ask you: do you have any ghost stories? Have you ever encountered anything in the supernatural that you can't really explain?
I'll tell you one thing. It would have been back in January, right? And I was with one of my clients. He's an artist, and his girlfriend. And I told you about that woman that I met that fucking flipped my world upside down. That got me into investigating everything. And Anyway, she was trying to describe this relationship to me. So we'd kind of meet up for drinks and this and that. And we were sitting in this bar back in January, and he was sitting on the corner. I had my back against the wall. It was like the short end of the bar, right? And she was in the middle. And she had this martini glass there. And I was looking down at it, and she was looking down at it. And the friggin' thing moved about an inch, inch and a half. And I looked at her, I said, "Did you see that?" And she's like, "Yeah." But she's used to seeing stuff like this, right? Now, last summer, my daughter and my wife were walking the dog back. We got a long driveway, and they were walking back past the pond. And I was inside, passed out. And it was still light out. And my daughter, who was like 14 at the time, looks up and goes, "Daddy?" But my wife was looking at the other way, and she pointed, and she thought it was me in a white suit with a white hat walking kind of by them about 15, 20 feet away, right? And then by the time my wife looked, this and that apparition disappeared. And then they came in, and my wife said this, such and such just happened. And I called my daughter out. I said, "Hey, describe to me the thing." And I started to diagram her what she told me, right? Where he was on the driveway, what direction he was going, approximate distance from them, position of my wife, the dog, her, the pond, blah, blah, blah. And my daughter said, no, but it was by that white flowering shrub. So she goes, "I probably thought that." So she's already scientific in her mind. But from the diagram and the sighting, there's no way that flowering shrub is in the way, right? It's like, it's like trying to trace a Lee Harvey Oswald bullet, except it's in a straight line here, right? So I got her to describe the thing. She wasn't freaked out. But my mentor that I talked about, Dr. Persinger, he was world famous for people to call him about paranormal stuff, right? Around the world. Now, back then, it was the early days of the internet. You had to go to a different room. You couldn't transmit pictures, just statistical data, maybe write a little joke at the bottom or whatever the fuck, right? And the military had it and the universities had it. So anyway, because we were pals, I hung around his office and listened to these calls from around the world. People are like, "Oh, I'm seeing white lights in the sky, this and that." So while listening in on these calls and his conversations with the people as he tested it, I got used to testing for this kind of stuff, right? So I put it to the test. So I didn't see the ghost, but my daughter saw the ghost or the apparition, whatever you want to call it, different dimension, realm, vibration. It'll work when you do the proper math and science on it. And then I saw that thing move, like whatever. Then my buddy tried to pass it off. Yeah, no, I was jiggling the table. I'm like, "No, dude, the fucking table wasn't moving. Like my forearms on it. You know what I mean? Like I saw this fucking thing move, right?" So who moved it? What forces? I don't know. When did you see a ghost? Like
That's I've had some pretty crazy experiences, and something I've realized doing this podcast is it's not just crazy people that have seen and experienced this shit. A lot of credible people, and people who don't even believe in that kind of stuff have these kind of experiences. It is a real trend, and it's blown my mind how many people have some sort of paranormal experience, or how many people have seen a UFO. It's more people have that kind of stories than not, really.
That goes up a lot.
I have a guy that's worked
for me for
over a dozen years.
I think a lot of people don't bring it up. I think it goes a lot back to the training people get, and so many people won't bring it up.
Well, they question themselves if they're fucking crazy, right? Like it defaults, and then they expose themselves to ridicule. Many of them don't have the basis with which to interpret, the numbers or possible things. Like I was the teaching assistant as an undergraduate for sensation and perception receptor processes. So like I have a pretty good sense of this. And then I got to pal around with a world famous guy that studied the paranormal and, all this other stuff. So when Alex was telling me that he's seen ghosts or weird shit, My first thought was, were you on anything that could interpret brain functioning, alcohol, drugs, pharmaceuticals, recreational, whatever? Were you near electromagnetic equipment at all? How much you'd slept, what you'd eaten, possible allergic reactions, and what was the other one? It was a pretty fucking basic one, right? But all this stuff shoots through my head as I want to pose a question to start testing if what you saw was real. Because even if what you saw wasn't touchable or measurable, it was touchable or measurable enough in your brain to fucking perceive it, And again, one of my other neuroscience professors, she helped standardize the MRI, the magnetic resonance imaging machines, before they were released to the public. She works at Johns Hopkins now, Catherine Macarack. I think that's where she works anyway, I lost that. But they can put you in an MRI and fucking see the activity, where in the brain, this and that, while they're telling you to think of stuff, right? Whereas back in the 50s in Montreal, when the CIA was running their shit out of that psychiatric hospital, they had to crack your head open and start poking around. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you, the famous one is that lady, I smell burnt toast, right? Because the brain doesn't have nerve endings, so you can do this. But we have machinery that can measure this real time. So whether that happened to Alex entirely in his brain, or whether it happened in a physical measurable dimension, whatever you want to call it, reality, doesn't matter. The perception was there. So let's investigate that perception.
This is a conversation for next time, but I don't think.
Yeah, no problem.
I don't think there's a difference between the imaginary and this other dimension we're speaking of. I think there's a very
then you get into Matrix territory.
There's a very fine line between schizophrenia and spirit communication.
So what's schizophrenia? I used to volunteer at the psychiatric ward on the schizophrenic thing back again while I was an undergraduate, right? It's the way they interpret their world. So they call it like a hallucination or whatever. Now, we all hallucinate our reality. And we have a consensus that we agree on that same fucking reality. Now, when you start pushing the boundaries of that hallucination where it's not shared, you start describing it as crazy or schizophrenic, or he has a devil, or he's got fucking neurochemistry that's off. Well, whatever fucking way you want to describe it, it all fucking works. He's seeing and interacting with shit that I don't have the fucking equipment to pick up on at that moment. Or it's suppressed from me, right? Somehow. Doesn't mean that what they're seeing, and that they're schizophrenic, right? Like
that's what I'm saying, is it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
Different ways.
Yeah, it is. And it's very important.
Well, Alice,
you guys gotta go.
That's a good note to end on. Just remember, Alice, that the voices are real. They're real people, and listen to them sometimes.
Even the ones coming out of the depths of the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
We're just down here having a tea party.
Especially those ones, man. Especially those ones.
Peter, it's
all right.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Merry holidays.
Yeah. All that stuff. I'm gonna worship a tree now, right?
Happy Yuletide, everybody.
Yeah. Fill your boots, man. All the best to you guys. Always.
Yeah.
All right, man.